I think it's about time we ask the uncomfortable question. Out of tennis's 4 sacred tournaments, the Grand Slams, one stands just a little outside the circle of influence. Not in quality of tennis, not in the caliber of players, but in impact, in legacy, in the historical and emotional weight that echoes long after the final ball is struck. And it's not an insult. It's not even a criticism. It's a thought experiment. Today, we're talking about the Australian Open, the Grand Slam that, despite everything, might just be the least influential slam in tennis history. Let's unpack why that is, but first, let me make one thing crystal clear. I love the Australian Open. I love the midnight 5-setters. I love the blue plexi cushion courts under the lights. I love how Aussie crowds bring the perfect balance of energy and irreverence. It's the fun slam, the chaotic one, the unpredictable one. So no, this isn't a takedown. This isn't some arrogant dismissal of one of tennis's crown jewels. It's actually a celebration of how unique the Australian Open is, while also exploring why it lags behind in the shadow of Wimbledon, Roland Garros, and the US Open when it comes to cultural weight and long-term influence. Because if we're being honest, the Aussie Open has always had an identity crisis, and it starts with history. The Australian Open began in 1905, just 2 years after Wimbledon became the unofficial mecca of the sport. But unlike its European and American counterparts, the Aussie Open was geographically cursed. It was isolated, literally. For decades, Australia was an impossible trip for most top international players. Travel was expensive, time-consuming, and logistically a nightmare. In the pre-jet era, it took weeks to get down under by boat. So what did that mean? A lot of the greats simply didn't bother. Let's look at the facts. Until the 1980s, many of the world's top players routinely skipped the Australian Open. Bjorn Borg never played it in his prime. Jimmy Connors pulled out for years. John McEnroe, sporadic at best. And when they did play, it was often in a tournament lacking the depth of the other majors. Even as late as 1977, the Aussie Open only featured 10 of the top 50 players. 10! That created a kind of historical hole. Legends were crowned in the UK, the US, and France, but Australia? It was viewed as the optional slam, the bonus major, and that perception stuck. Now real quick, if you're enjoying this deep dive into tennis history, do me a quick favor. Like this video and subscribe to the channel. We're building a community here at Hot Take Tennis where we don't just watch the sport, we challenge it. We ask weird questions. We rethink old assumptions. So if that's your vibe, smash that subscribe button and let's keep going. The surface, the color, the bounce, the entire feel of a tournament defines its personality. Wimbledon has grass, pristine, exclusive, and elegant. Roland Garros has red clay, grueling, grinding, and distinct. The US Open has deco turf, fast, aggressive, loud, much like New York itself. And the Australian Open? Well, it's changed a lot. From grass to rebound ace, from rebound ace to plexi cushion, from plexi cushion to green set, all in a few decades. That constant reinvention means the Aussie Open has never truly established a fixed identity. Ask fans what the AO feels like, and you'll get different answers depending on the era. It wasn't until 2008 with the introduction of plexi cushion that the AO even started to feel modern and consistent. Before that, it was infamous for unpredictable court speeds, rubbery bounces, and even player injuries due to the surface heating up under the Australian sun. So while other slams are steeped in surface-based legacy, Where Nadal is clay and Federer was grass, the Australian Open has struggled to offer the same iconic court-player association. Now let's talk timing, because this might be the biggest reason the Australian Open struggles with influence. It's the first slam of the year, and at first glance, that sounds great. What a better way to kick off a new season, right? Well, sort of. I think in reality, it's sort of a curse. Players come in underprepared, injuries from the previous season still linger, some stars ease into the year and treat the AO as a warm-up, while others are dealing with rust, rehab, or uncertainty. That's why the Aussie Open has produced more surprise finalists out of nowhere runs and shock exits than any other slam in recent memory. Remember Marcos Baghdatis, Fernando Gonzalez, Jo-Wilfried Tsonga, Thomas Enqvist all reached AO finals. And while we loved those runs, they fed into the idea that the AO is more about who's fit early rather than who's truly dominant. Even Novak Djokovic's 10 titles, while incredible, have sometimes felt slightly compartmentalized, like he owns January, but the rest of the year has its own storyline. The Australian Open doesn't shape the season, it previews it, and that makes a difference. Now let's address the elephant in the room: prestige. If we're ranking the slams by perception Wimbledon stands alone, it's the cathedral, the tradition, the suit and tie of tennis. Roland Garros is the physical and psychological marathon, the red clay war zone. And the US Open? Well, it's the show, the big stage under New York City lights, brash, bold, and dramatic. Now, the Australian Open, by comparison, feels lighter. Not lesser in quality, but in cultural weight. When a player wins Wimbledon, it's legacy defining. When they win Roland Garros, it's a testament to their endurance. When they win the US Open, it's an exclamation point. But the AO, sometimes it just feels like a really good week in January. And it's not just fan perception. Even commentators, former players, and analysts have occasionally implied that a Wimbledon or US Open carries more career value than an Australian Open. Fair? Maybe not. But real? I'd say absolutely. Let's take a quick hypothetical. Think of it this way. Player A wins 2 Wimbledons and 2 French Opens. Player B wins 4 Australian Opens. Whose career feels more decorated? 9 out of 10 fans instinctively say player A, even if the raw number of slams is lower. I think that reveals something. When we evaluate greatness, we weigh Wimbledon and Roland Garros more heavily. That's not necessarily right or wrong, it's just how tennis culture has evolved. And again, it puts the AO at a disadvantage when it comes to legacy. Now let's go back to the 80s and 90s. Ivan Lendl won 2 Australian Opens. Agassi won 4. Yet when we talk about their careers, it's often about their French Open heartbreaks or US Open triumphs that get the spotlight. Even Roger Federer, beloved in Melbourne, has 6 AO titles. But ask fans to name his greatest wins, and you'll hear about Wimbledon 2007, US Open 2008, or the French Open in 2009 before you hear about Australian Open 2018. There's a quiet irony in that. Now, to be fair, the Australian Open has done incredible work in the last 20 years to change this narrative. Melbourne Park is now a state-of-the-art facility. The night sessions are electric. The tournament is run brilliantly. Craig Tiley and his team have made the AO one of the most watchable and player-friendly events on the calendar. It's no longer the awkward afterthought it once was. It's a spectacle. But here's the paradox. Spectacle doesn't equal influence. The tournament is fun, chaotic, and memorable, but I don't think that's the same thing as being defining. So, is the Australian Open the least influential slam? In terms of history? Probably. In terms of identity? Arguably. In terms of prestige? Yes, especially in the eyes of many fans. In terms of timing? I mean, undeniably, it's the only major that opens a season rather than shapes it. But don't get it twisted, that doesn't make it less important. It makes it different. The Australian Open is a mirror. It shows us who's ready, who's focused, who trained when others rested. It doesn't crown the season's best. It reveals the most prepared warrior at the dawn of battle. And for that, it deserves respect. Not just for what it is, but for what it's becoming. So what do you think? Is the Australian Open the least influential slam? Or do we underestimate it because it doesn't fit the mold? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear all the hot takes. And once again, thank you so much for watching. We just crossed 1,000 subscribers, and I'm honestly blown away. This started as a passion project, and now it's starting to grow into a real community of tennis nerds who think differently. You all rock. I've got a lot more coming, so stay tuned, stay opinionated, and as always, this is Hot Take Tennis.